Victim coming out, victim coming out.
The fire ground is dynamic. Priorities can change by the second. This series is about our first priority, life priority. We'll hear from the firefighters that have made a grab in live fire conditions, the decisions they made and the lessons they learned. Listen as they tell you about their experience, learn from their mistakes and their successes. Expect fire and expect victims. Expect the unexpected and plan accordingly. This is Life Priority. Cool. Well, thanks for meeting with us, Joe. If you want to go ahead and run us through one of your rescue scenarios here.
Sure.
And,
So we had one with Stoops off of Medic 64 back in 2015, I think it was. We were dispatched to a structure fire. We ended up being second in behind engine 60s. Got there, single-story residence, had some pretty moderate smoke coming from the Alpha Delta corner. Looked like it had some extension back into the Charlie side there. Hose line was going in and going to the right. They just pulled it right when Jason and I got there. He and I had a quick briefing on the lawn and decided we were going to go search, and we went left.
The fire, I believe, was in the kitchen to the right. It was looked like a normal 3-2 ranch-style home, garage, kitchen on the right, and then living quarters off to the left. So when we showed up, there's active fire coming back at us through the door. I think actually one of the 60s crews was coming out to pull in more hose or advance more hose, and firefighting was happening to our right.
We cleared the first 3 rooms relatively quickly, and I didn't find anybody. Met back up in the hallway. Didn't have a lot of high heat at the time, but just had smoke down to the floor at 0 visibility.
Our search pattern was a leapfrog. One would go in, next hold the door, and then go down the hall and do the next room. And I believe we made a right turn, and I felt a doorway into another doorway, and it had felt like carpet all the way through, but this had turned into tile.
As we went back into where we found out later was the bedroom, Jason had us be quiet. He's calling out fire department, and he heard what sounded to me like kind of like a goose getting stepped on.
Rhythmic sound, it sounded almost like a goose. I keep saying it sounded like a goose call, basically.
He and I both went to barrel through the door. He went left, and I went right into the bedroom, and he immediately located her in the bathroom, sitting in a shower chair.
It was conditions where smoke was down to the floor. It wasn't hot smoke, but it was warm. And then it wasn't until I was basically nose to nose with the gal, first grab, so I'm all excited. I'm like, Joe, we got someone in here. And so we're going back and forth like, we got someone? Yeah, we got somebody. And trying to get out over the airwaves, and the radio's blocked off. So it's like, all right, let's just start moving her out.
Once he said, hey, I got her, we flipped her. I turned back around, grabbed onto him, and we kind of came back out into the hallway. And at that point, he and I carried her back down the hallway, back out to fresh air.
At this point, other crews are trying to make their way in behind us, and we're just blowing them out of the way, just moving right through them. And then once we get her to the doorway, we realize that she's unfortunately inverted, so we set her down and roll her back over.
Did a quick set of vitals on her, took a good look at her, just as truck 62 was showing up and engine 62.
Yep, so we arrived, we were the second engine on scene. Engine 60 arrived first. Medic 64 was right behind them. My captain, Dave Burnett, took command. They had their own water supply right there. I checked in, I was the driver on engine 62. I checked in with their engineer. He said he was good on the supply, so firefighter Rich Turner and I went in. No reports of a victim, nothing from Medic 64. They just said they were gonna go in for a search. So we went in just like any other fire, fire attack was being taken care of. We went in to do a search. It was smoked out pretty good. Visibility was pretty poor, but there was no heat. By the time we entered, they had knocked down the brunt of the fire. So we went down the hallway, and as we went down the hallway, we were met by Medic 64 bringing the first victim out. Firefighter Turner assisted them with getting the person out. And I had told him beforehand, we set up a plan that we were gonna do a left-hand search. We weren't sure what Medic 64 had already searched, so we just went in, we're gonna do a left-hand search. So I continued on my search, knowing that Rich Turner was gonna come back and meet up with me. I ducked into the first bedroom on the left, found my victim on the floor below the window there. So I radioed out to command that we found a second victim. He was already calling for ambulance for the first victim that was already brought out. Unfortunately, this gentleman didn't have clothes on. He was in his underwear only, and he had some second-degree burns on him, so I didn't have a whole lot to grab onto. So I was able to sit him up, get under his arms, and just sit pick him. And I got him out into the hallway and was on my way out. And when firefighter Turner met back up with me, and he helped assist with the legs, we got to the front door. I tripped over the hose lines there, so we had a little struggle there getting him over there just because, the body weight, he fell on top of me. So at that point, Truck 62 arrived. They assisted with the victim and getting him out to the front lawn.
And so I ran down the street to get the medic and came back up. And once we got the medic up there, they had found a second victim and had brought out her husband. He was in much worse shape, so we ended up taking him in the ambulance with us, and we called 61, who showed up, and they ended up just driving her in code 2 with just a non-rebreather.
Based on the players involved that had hands-on victims, you, Jason Stoops, and Joe Schmidt, was there any average-sized human beings on this fire with hands on anybody, or was it just all of
Turner
you?
Was there.
Right.
Rich Turner's a pretty average-sized dude.
Average size, not average ability,
but
that's
man,
for sure.
He's a 10 when it comes to firefighting
100%,
skills.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no,
So you guys
Stoops,
are kind of...
Stoops and Joe did a great job, because like I said, we arrived. There was no reports of victims in this structure. It was just hey, let's go down the SOGs. We got fire attack. Okay, we'll get primary search. And we didn't even know there was a victim until we ran into them in the hallway, and they were bringing the victim out. I think they were probably trying to get it out on the radio, but that's the most critical time in the fire when command was getting established, and you got the battalion chief, coming in and trying to figure out what's going on while Captain Burnett was, establishing command. So there's a lot of traffic that first initial couple minutes. So I think they finally got that traffic out as they were bringing the victim out. And then when I found my victim, fortunate for me, there was a break in the radio traffic that I was able to get out and say we found a second victim, and I was going to be bringing him out the front door. So command was able to establish a plan and get another medic come in and get a crew out there to assist with EMS.
Did the conditions change at all for you? Fire conditions, smoke conditions? And if so, what do you think caused that change?
Yeah, so smoke conditions did change on the way back out. I think us just horizontally ventilating it through that front door definitely had the smoke rise when we got closer to the entrance, or to the entrance or to the exit for us at that point. Engine 60 was getting a pretty good knock on the kitchen, like one of the back room fires, which did obviously decrease the heat that was in there, but with her adrenaline going like that, we really didn't feel a whole lot. But I would attribute her surviving to that aggressive fire attack and the aggressive search off the ambulance.
Conditions were already getting better from what the arrival report said and what I was envisioning in my mind. You could see the steam conversion, but there was heavy smoke chugging out of the front door still. Visibility, like I mentioned, was poor, but I never remember feeling that heat. I was never forced to my knees or anything. Even walking by the kitchen, it was a tenable situation. It was just heavy smoke, but the heat was dissipated enough to where I could walk in. I walked down the hallway and I never felt that heat like a fire that's still actively burning. Smoke conditions didn't get better until the truck got there, and then they ventilated, and once they did. But by that point, we had both the victims out of the house already. That whole thing, when I got there, probably 2 minutes or less, I think we had both of those victims were out. Medic 64 already had theirs out pretty much right when we got there. And then from the time I found my victim to the time we were out on the front lawn was probably less than 2 minutes for sure. It wasn't very long. And then when we went back in to continue the search is when the visibility got better, because ventilation had been performed by then.
Can you walk us through kind of your packaging of the victim? I mean, I'm thinking of you and Stoops barreling into this house, tearing down walls, right? Fighting over the lady to pull her out. Obviously, calmer heads prevailed, but can you explain that a little bit to us?
Yeah, she, with Jason being there with us, it was obviously having another really strong partner. Get underneath her arms very easy, and the more I tried to help with the legs, the more I was kind of in the way. So it was actually just better for me to clear a path for him and grab onto Jason and lead him out.
Perfect. So you were behind him, like with drill, and kind of just making egress.
I think with a lot of searches, once you locate a victim, you don't necessarily need a whole lot of people to grab the victim. If you have a couple people, that's really all you're generally going to need, depending on the size of them and the conditions. But what's really helpful is somebody handling radio communication and somebody clearing a path and finding the easiest way back out. How can we get this victim to the cool air outside as quick as possible with inflicting the least amount of damage?
Yeah, we grabbed her. I grabbed her out and started yarding her backwards. I can only imagine if she was badly burned, if she had wet clothing or something like that. If you grab an arm or a leg or something like that and you slide, well, at the time I was not going to let her go. And once it started clearing up, we were able to see her orientation of her flip her over and arms and legs out the door.
I mean, I had thought about, maybe doing a shelter in place because the bedroom that we were in, there was no fire conditions there, it was just smoke. So we weren't in a bad spot, but it was smoked out and I knew this guy needed to be outside. The thought had crossed my mind to go through the window, but he was a fairly large individual, so getting him up and out of the window and the time it would take to clear the sash and all that, I figured it was, 15 step to get him out the door, down the hallway and out the front door. It wasn't very far in, so I just, like I mentioned earlier, I just sat him up because he didn't have any clothes to grab onto. I honestly didn't even think about webbing, but I think trying to put webbing on him and try to drag him out that way would have been, time consuming and not beneficial because then you're dragging him. So I was able to just sit him up and, I just got behind him and squatted and stood him up. And so it was basically just his heels on the ground at that point, kind of like we do in the combat challenge with the dummy drag. It was the same concept. That's all I did was grab behind and I was able to get him out. And, if it weren't for the hose line, I would have got him all the way to the front door. But, I tripped on that because I was walking backwards and couldn't see what was on the ground. It was effective in that situation. If we were in a back bedroom and, maybe there was another option to get out, a back slider or a door out of the master bedroom or something might have been a more viable solution. But from where we were located in the structure, the front door was the closest and probably most appropriate to get him out in the quickest amount of time.
Yeah, I remember this call. I was either on probation or shortly after probation, and it totally changed my perspective on what you can and can't do off the ambulance. We were obviously already training and, you've been through the academy and you've had some experiences of your own, but watching you guys bring in that victim and talking to you afterwards really just kind of changed my personal perspective and definitely gave me some slides that I used later and still use. When you arrived, it was engine 60, right? And so city engine and you guys as the medic. Was there any complications with them or anything you would have done different with them? Walk me through that.
Yeah, I think, because I believe the captain was still outside, so letting them know that we were going to go in and start a primary.
Okay. So you did have communication with him?
No, I think doing that again, had we done that
Gotcha.
again, I would have let him know that we were going in. Jason might have said something as we were masking up. Yeah, definitely, obviously voicing it. Medic 64 is on scene. We're going to be conducting a primary search going left, going towards the Alpha Bravo corner. Something that lets everybody else know who's coming in that they have a medic unit inside, that we are conducting a primary, and then we have fire attack going on. And obviously, once we've located a victim, bringing them out and then letting that the other crews coming in know, hey, we've got a victim. We're now leaving. We need to be replaced on this call. Would have been very helpful as well. But I think the communication just between Jason and I was great. We knew exactly what we were doing. He and I were in communication the whole time we were searching. So on a very small level, we were good, but
maybe not so small.
Right, but the overview of the whole incident, the communication should have obviously happened over the radio. Let people know what had actually transpired and what our intentions were once we had the victim out. So.
Can you run me through a little bit of the culture that you experienced here at Metro Fire as far as suppression medics, and then any changes that you saw throughout your years, and then kind of your expectations now as a captain? You're working in Engine Medic House. What is your expectation for them when you're going to a fire?
Yeah, I think when we first came online, the expectation of being on the ambulance was that you were part of that crew. You were the 2 extra people making that 3 personnel crew whole with totally. 4 and then 1 extra. That was definitely ingrained to us in the academy. And then that was further ingrained once we came online and we started going to fires and we weren't assigned, medical standby and showing up and just bringing a grenade. A lot of times they're like, hey, grab us a second hose line, go here, or go in and conduct a primary. And once that the ball started rolling with us and that was just expected, that was pretty seamless for us. You know, that was how it would go. As a captain, that's exactly how I treat these guys. They are part of our crew. We train together and we work together. And so if there's an opportunity for them to go conduct a primary, and I feel like they've been up to the level on their training and they're comfortable with it and I'm comfortable with it, absolutely I'm going to assign them. Fast water, fast search. That's what we're trying to do, right? So as long as we're handling our point, which is putting water on the fire, I have no problem with sending those guys in to do a primary on a residence. I think we utilize our medics very smartly when we have the opportunity to insert them. Sometimes the best thing for them to do is to stand by with medical gear in case there is a rescue if they show up late. But for us, showing up that early, and like you said, it was a separate agency, we didn't talk at all. We just did our thing and we let them do their thing because we understood that that's what was expected of us with Metro, was to go in and conduct a primary and go look for victims. And we knew that they were handling fire attack for us, which is fine. As far as Metro goes, you show up at engine medic, and I'm assigning our medic out of the gate to either primary search or pulling me a second line or helping with the first line. They're not going to stand idly by with the gurney. There's too much work to be done at the beginning of any incident to have them standing by with their EMS gear out of the gate. Now, if they show up late and everything else is pretty much being handled, they can grab an exterior line or something like that, but a lot of times you are going to need those guys to be standing by, or gals to be standing by with their ambulance and their gurney ready to go. Just because of how many rescues we've had lately in Metro Fire, and because of our culture, and because how aggressive we are with fire attack and with search, we are expecting to find victims, and we've been pulling people out, you know. And so to have the other crew, who is really their primary job there, is to receive a victim and to transport them. You can't do that in the engine or a truck. Then they do need to be ready. But you know, if they're fighting fire, we obviously can start rendering care and then have them come over and take the patient and take off. But we should be utilizing our medics for primary search, secondary searches, for fire attack. They're firefighters. That's exactly what we should be using them for.
That.
What are the big takeaways or lessons learned from your seat on this fire?
I think biggest lesson is probably just be prepared to find victims. We kind of went into that fire like any other fire, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't expecting to go in there on that fire. I just thought we'd go in, go through the motions, do our search, and come out and say primary all complete, and came around the corner and they got a victim, and then boom, found another one, and it happened so quick. So that kind of opened up my eyes. That was the first fire I'd been on where victims were actually removed. And it kind of opened my eyes up to realize not to get complacent, and every time we are doing a search to, you know, expect to find someone. Obviously, when people are saying there's somebody in there, or, you know, your suspicion is high, that changes things. But if you're not getting that, if it's, you know, in the middle of the night, or, you know, even in the middle of the day, that was a afternoon fire, it was, or mid-morning, it was middle of the day. So there was no one outside reporting, hey, an elderly couple lives in there. So just always have that in the back of your mind that we're searching for a reason. We're not just searching just to check a box and you know, say we did it, but we're searching to try to find someone and save someone. So definitely, you know, keep that in mind when we are going through the motions, and actually do a good search. Make sure you know, you're doing it fast and efficient, but efficient is key. You know, you don't want to do it so fast where you're missing people. You know, it's good to do a thorough search and, you know, try to find anybody, you know, whether it's animals or people in there, and get through it that way. So.
Lessons learned from it, we did do a couple things wrong, which was we didn't voice that we were doing a primary. We didn't voice which way we were going, and we didn't voice that we'd located a victim until the next couple of engines had arrived, and they saw us working on her on the lawn. Once Truck 62 got there with Matt Cole and his crew, they then had voiced that we had located a victim. We took one of the firefighters off 62 with us. Aaron Todd came with us and drove in with her husband, and at that point then it had been known that there was 2 victims located inside. Anticipate finding somebody. Every time you do a primary, what if I find somebody? What am I going to do? How am I going to package them up? How am I going to get them out? Do I have all the right stuff with me right now? So just have that plan in your head every time you're going in on something. That, you know, while we're doing training, there's no pressure on you. You know, I mean, have that nice, calm thought process now of what are you going to do when you find it. So being able to actually utilize the training that we have once you've located a victim is absolutely paramount in us rescuing our community members. So yeah, be prepared to pull somebody out and always anticipate you're going to find somebody.
Expect fire, expect victims.
There you go. Let's
That's
hope.
it, right? Yeah.
Every day.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
I know.
Fire service is about tradition. One of our traditions is about passing on our experiences and our lessons learned. When we do this, the story doesn't focus on the individual, but the team and the outcome. These lessons are shared so that you can better serve the public and your fellow firefighters. If you have a rescue and you're hesitant to tell your story, remember, the lessons you share may help save someone else's life or your own. Share your story by contacting us at lifepriority@metrofire.ca.gov.